Well, we are looking here at the very first design using gCADPlus created by a group in Ireland, and they very kindly sent it to us for us to look at and suggest any possible improvements to the way that they're using gCADPlus. So let's see, in no particular order of importance, if we can assist them in drawing a little more efficiently and cut down on drafting time. We do recommend to everyone using gCADPlus, one thing that can really trick you is, we'll zoom in here, this is a leader with an arrow on the end of it, but it's fairly difficult to select, and the reason here, and it's not necessarily the case in all instances, but for some reason if we go to global parameters, quite often we find that grips are not enabled. So let's enable it. Now when I pick that leader, can you see I've got a point marked in the center of the text? It also is important when we say we select this symbol of a tree here. Can you see it has a grip in the center of the symbol? The same applies if we pick what is a paver. You can see over here in the block here that it is in the properties box it is a paver. So you need that little marker. Make sure it's showing each time. The other thing I noticed when we took delivery of this drawing is that it was delivered to us with the background color black, and you can see that it's the good thing about working with a black background is that things stand out really well, but you can see very difficult to select that leader, that annotation and so on. So it's quite important to get comfortable going view and white or black. The reason that gCADPlus is set up this way to draft on a dark background is that it is a little kinder on your eyes, but you do need to be aware of black on a black background is not particularly useful, as you've just seen. The reason is that when we go to a layout space and I go click, we've got a white background now. So draft in what's called model space on a dark background and then view your developing design in layout space, which is white on the background, on a grey background in fact. So we recommend that in this case it would be better to draft with a white background. We think we can see things more easily. The designers here have made great use of layers, and some beginners don't use layers enough. Can you see here that the image, a really nice image of cobblestones and sort of relaxed curves going through that particular garden, are on their own layer. And what that means is that they're on layer L-images. If needed, you could turn off that. They might well be distracting you at some stage. So you could just click, I'll make the active layer back to 0, and I could turn off the images. So we have this drawing, a number of layers in it, and now the images all disappear. So let's reverse that to get back to where it was when we first saw it. On the subject of layouts, we think it's a really good idea to create a layout using format and layouts, and create even though you may not have easy access to a printer of reasonable size, we find clients love to get, say, an A2 sheet, and we can put the design on an A2 sheet and start dressing it up a little. Here we've added a title block placed in that sheet. It's A2 in size, even though, and by the way, in the title block we say the scale of this drawing when we print this sheet, it'll be 1:50 on an A2 sheet. So the title block information is of critical importance. We've also put a border around it. And the advantage of this is that you can at the when the client says go ahead, you can imprint. It's worth going to a print shop and printing it on a A2 sheet and have it laminated. And the first contact I had with a garden designer for my property was they gave me an A2 sheet, and I've still got it 15 or 20 years later. So it's a valuable thing to set up a larger size sheet. Let's go back to model space, and I think any design needs to have a scale. We like, even though we've said we plotted at 1 to 50, I like to have an internal scale, and most users do. So we can go to our blocks library here and see if we can find a scale, that scale bar that's been loaded. Here it is, a 5 meter, and that would have come from the access to the library, and then into details, and then scroll down here to scale bars, and you can pick up a range of scale bars from there. In the same vein, you also want to put a north point in, because that's of critical importance. Let's see if we can find a north point. So library, details, north. Here's one I quite like. So we'll insert it into the drawing. I'll go for 100. You can change the scale in the properties box, and there we are. We've pumped that up. Probably needs to go up again. We'll try 250 and 250, and there's our scale. Sorry, there's our north point. So now we can rotate that north point in the appropriate direction, and that's of course why we put it in, and we want to place elements in the design appropriately. If this is a contemplative, say, seating area, you perhaps want this one over here in the sun. This is in the northern hemisphere, so you want a south view from that little platform with a patio platform with a pergola over the top. Well, let's turn our attention to these dimensions. This is the dimension here to indicate cobblestones is drawn using a leader. If we look over here in the properties box, that's a leader. It's also done in a style called standard. gCADPlus designs can have a number of dimensioning styles, and if we go to dimension styles, because this one's coming from the Euro area, let's set it was originally we were looking at standard, but let's switch to Euro, and I've made some changes to it. If we say the text height 300 and list, and then I'm going to make it current and go OK. So the text height is 300. The geometry, I've changed the leader style to a dot, and I'll save that. So now we've set a dimension style with a bigger text, and instead of having a tiny little arrow, we should have a bigger blob. So we should be able to simply select that, come over to the properties box and say, well, we're going to take and set Euro. So now we have that bit done. Now it's a little bit awkward to bring a leader in that direction, and the thing about a leader is you can simply reset it again. So there's the cobblestone through there, and we can take other leaders and also apply and change that to the Euro. I'm not sure. We've got a tool called modify match the properties. Can we take the properties of this one and match to that? Yeah, and that works. So that's a quick way of moving over this design, changing everything now to a style which I think looks a little more effective, and it gives you plenty of opportunity for moving things around to your satisfaction. Notice here with a change in text height where we need to move things just a little. So I think that's improved things just a little. I notice that if I select the cobblestone hatching here, it's been done as a block. If I right click now and edit that block, the area of cobblestones has been hatched using an aggregate hatch pattern. And if we go to draw and hatch and we click in here, you see there's the aggregate pattern. But let me close from that now. What I'm now going to do is select that hatching, and I'll move the hatching out of the way. We'll keep it over here just for the moment, because I think we can suggest an easier way to work. This one's been made as a block called Cobbles 1. Then if we edit the block, we can go in there. There is the hatch pattern, and there's also a polyline around the edge to define it. So it's been turned into a shape, if you like, and then turned into a block. And I think we can make it simpler. Well, I'll demonstrate with the hatching on the right hand side, which is again a block. And I mean, this is how I would handle it. I would select the block and break it up into its constituent parts. I'd then pick the hatch pattern, note that it's aggregate, and then I would delete that. And now let's draw hatch. We have a number of ways of operating, but the most sophisticated way is to pick a point. We've got our hatch pattern and the scale, which was 500 set. Now we can pick a point, and we click in there, and gCADPlus radiates out and finds a boundary, does the boundary for itself without us. Their drawing's unable to place that density, so it's telling us to, of course, make sure you burn in that 500, and there is our cobblestone hatching being applied. So if we zoom in there, it's a useful pattern for cobblestones, and we can set its colour. We'd probably want a relatively dark colour, and we'll pick that one there, and I hope you can see that's quite quick, easy and efficient. Well, let's apply the hatching using the same technique in the left hand side of the drawing. So we will hatch. This time we'll select an entity. So if we zoom in here, there's a polyline being used, so we just hit enter, making sure that that scale is appropriate, and we've put the cobblestone hatching in a little more easily than I think was done originally. We can modify and match properties from that one to that one. There's some adjustment to do with colour. It's probably the colour of the... We zoom in here and match properties, pick up that polyline, not that one. Zoom in a little more, we want this one, and we'd like it applied to the inside of that one. And now let's zoom extents and see how we're going. So hopefully that helps our users improve their hatching. I have an idea that the hatching here, which in effect is done with a very thick line, we would normally not do that. We would, however, set the colour. Colour 39 is quite dark. We'll see how that goes. It's not showing up to me, so maybe it's being hidden. we'll go Tools and Draw Order and bring it to the front. That hasn't made a lot of difference from my point of view. It's another block. So we have exactly the same problem that we've had before. I'm going to again move, and I'll move from the end point of this one, and I'll move it across with polar on. And if I edit that block, it's been made colour yellow, so that's why we were having trouble with it. We'll just put it back to there and then close. Here's our block. We've lost the boundary there. We're not going to be able to position that as well as I would have liked. We may be able to use gCADPlus's undo function to pop it back, and that has actually fixed the problem. We're now able to see the hatching through there, the gravel hatching there. So changing the order of entities is very important. You'd probably want to bring this one to the front, and we'll select that one while we're at it, and we'll go Tools and bring to the front. So I'm quite happy that we've improved things and made a few tweaks, if you like, to the design, and we're now ready to print. I'd be inclined, after editing and improving all of that, I'd be inclined to reduce the size of that title block. Instead of bringing it in at a scale of 1, let's bring it in at 3/4 scale and then move it. Actually, you don't need to issue the move command, just pick the insertion point and drag it into position as I'm doing now. That's quite a lengthy movie, but I hope that it helps. If I pick the floating viewport, notice that it's got a view scale of close to 50, so you might want to fix that at 50 and say yes, this is fixed scale. And it's obvious when we go into the porthole that positions the drawing, I can no longer size that. I am restricted to that fixed viewport window. Well, that's probably too much for us now, but let's hope that helps our new beginners.